Chapter 3. Luli. What say you, talking lizard? Would you prefer sugared almonds or roasted pistachios? No one could hear Luli whispering to the gin lizard beneath her headscarf, and no one heard his response, an exasperated sigh. Kadir had been in a sullen mood since they docked in Medine an hour ago, suggesting that every opportunity they returned to Dahlia's. Luli had ignored him. Why rush back to the tavern when they had coin to spend? Roasted pistachios it is. She approached the stall with 2 bronze coins. The owner, a kindly old man who smelled of sesame, was happy to trade her for a bag of nuts. What a wonderful thing it is to see you again, Layla. Arrived on the Asham, did you? Layla. Over the years, her birth name had become an alias, one she offered to people she didn't trust to keep her identity as the midnight merchant a secret. She preferred it that way. A buried identity, a buried past. That I did. She popped a pistachio in her mouth and sighed. As always, they were perfection. The only thing that would have made them better was the shells. That was just because she enjoyed cracking them open to annoy Kadir. Any news from around the souk? The old man beckoned her forward. Don't tell anyone I told you this, but... She let him speak, nodding occasionally to show that she was listening. The stall owner liked to gossip, and she was happy to indulge him. Sometimes he unknowingly gave her leads on potential customers or filled her in on governmental rumors. Kadir especially was interested in the latter. He cared more for politics than she did. Eventually, though, even Kadir grew bored. Can we go home? We should... His words collapsed in a sharp inhale. Luli, to your right. At first she saw nothing out of the ordinary. Stall owners waved their hands and beckoned to crowds. City folk strolled through the cramped thoroughfare, garbed in everything from black veils to colorful silk robes. But then she caught sight of the woman fading in and out of the hordes like a mirage. Tall and radiant, with impossibly sculpted features that portrayed no imperfection. Luli was awestruck by her beauty. Kadir hissed in her ear, and she hurriedly rubbed at the iron rings on her fingers. Slowly, Luli's mind cleared. It occurred to her that despite the woman's otherworldly perfection, no one so much as glanced in her direction. She may as well have been a wraith. Even now, Luli had to consciously focus to keep her in sight. Had Kadir not alerted her to the woman's presence, Luli's gaze would have slid over her like water. A djinn. No sooner had she come to the realization than she saw a human man in plain beige attire trailing behind the djinn. He had an odd smile on his face that did not match his glazed eyes. What could possibly bring a djinn to Medine? Kadir inched closer to her ear. I don't know, she murmured, but I would like to find out. She politely broke up her conversation with the merchant, then followed the djinn and the smiling man for a distance. You think the human's a hunter? She withdrew a 2-faced coin and flipped it. It came down on the djinn side. No. Strange. I have only known djinn to follow humans into cities for revenge, Kadir said. Luli picked up her pace. Kadir hissed in her ear. What are you doing? Following them. The 2-faced coin had never lied to her, which meant the djinn had enthralled this man for other reasons. She returned the coin to her pocket and took out her compass. Lead me to the djinn, she whispered. The enchanted arrow obeyed, pointing her toward the vanishing djinn. This is unwise, said Kadir. Then when has that ever stopped me? Kadir sighed. One day your curiosity is going to get us killed. But Luli had stopped listening. Her focus was on the compass, the magic that had never led her astray, the magic that many years ago had saved her life. How does it work? Layla asked as she tilted the compass. She had been traveling with the djinn through the desert for a week now, and she noticed the way he commanded the compass to lead them to shelter and quarry. It provides me with direction. When I am looking for something, it helps me locate it. Kadir looked at the compass with a fond smile on his face. Layla tilted it left and right, but the red arrow always swished back to her. Temperamental, her father had called it. But he had not understood its magic when he gave it to her, just as he hadn't anticipated that Kadir, its true owner, would return for it, and that in doing so he would save her life. Kadir moved closer to the dying fire. He waved his hand over the faintly burning embers, and they flared back to life. Other than the fire, there was little else in the camp, save for their weather-beaten tent and Kadir's bag of infinite space.
The djinn rolled his shoulders. The compass is mine. It insisted I accompany you, and so it is with you I shall stay until it points me in some other direction. Why would it do such a thing? He looked at her for a long moment. I was lost in your human desert and could not return home. That is why when I tracked the compass to you, it saw fit to guide me down a different path. His dark eyes bored into her. Your path. Layla swallowed a lump in her throat. Why can't you return home? He shook his head. Because I am no longer welcome there. But it does not matter. The compass has never led me astray. He said the words with a bold certainty, but his eyes, even awash in firelight, there were haunted shadows in them. Luli passed through a network of alleys before she saw the djinn again. She was guiding the man into an abandoned building of worship, a humble clay structure with latticed windows and faded crescent and star patterns running up the walls. The large metal doors leading into the building were open, barely revealing a chamber draped in unnatural darkness. What is your plan? Kadir's voice was a whisper. I'm going to talk to her, but just in case... Luli reached into the bag for her weapon of choice, a curved dagger with a hilt of black obsidian, a calf. The first letter in Kadir's name was painted in gold on the backside. It was the only mark of his ownership. What do you hope to gain from threatening a djinn? A man's life? Mayhap. The knife was a final resort. She avoided violence when possible, and the last thing she needed was for the djinn to realize the blade was a relic, a tool enchanted with djinn magic. She knew from experience that flashing relics in front of djinn was foolish, asking to die foolish. She entered the building. The spacious room inside was dark and empty, the worship alcoves carved into the walls covered in dust and cobwebs. The ceiling, despite depicting sunny skies, was gloomy and gray. What little light came through the windows was muted and dusty. It was as if the room had been sucked dry of its color. The djinn stood at its center, arms crossed. Luli stared at her hair, which was a river of living darkness that cascaded down her shoulders and faded into smoke at her back. The human man stood beside her with the strange smile still plastered on his face. Human girl, the djinn said flatly, leave. I have no business with you. Her gaze landed on Luli's hands. Belatedly, Luli realized the djinn could see her rings. She clasped her hands behind her back, but too late. You dare approach me with those rings? The djinn hissed. Luli suppressed a groan. The rings were a common protection against djinn possession. Naturally, the iron was invoked with their wrath. Though she was skeptical of their efficiency, Kadir insisted she wear them. Superstitions that do not kill you may save you, he often chided. The rings are for avoiding unfortunate misunderstandings like this one, Luli said carefully. And I only came to warn you against harming a human on city grounds. Her eyes flitted to the shadows on the walls, which stretched toward her like spilled ink. She fought a shudder as the djinn's soft voice filled the quiet space. Do you know how many of my people this man has killed? She prodded his chest with a finger. He is mine to do with as I please. The djinn stepped back and flicked her wrist. The darkness on the walls grew limbs and pushed Luli unceremoniously out the doors and into the light. Luli blinked. She glanced behind her at the receding darkness. She hesitated for one heartbeat. 2, 3. Luli! Kadir dug his claws into her shoulder in warning. She ignored him and chased the shadows back inside. The door slammed shut, trapping her in darkness. She heard movement behind her, but when she turned, saw nothing. I have never seen a human so willing to die. The djinn's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Luli readied her blade, steadied her shaky hands. The man is not a hunter. No response. She clutched the dagger tighter, waiting for something to strike at her, but the moment never came. Instead, she began to feel subtle burning in her lungs. Smoke. Luli stabbed desperately at the air in front of her, behind her. There was no resistance. Pressure swelled in her lungs until she couldn't breathe, until she was on her knees gasping for air. The blade slid through her fingers and clattered to the ground. If it made a sound, Luli couldn't hear it. There was nothing but the pressure, building, building, building. Struggle all you like, foolish girl. You cannot strike down shadows. Luli was vaguely aware of Kadir crawling off her shoulder. Then the world fell away and only pain remained. Luli's bones cracked, her ears popped, her vision clouded, and in the agonizing haze she saw snippets of her own blood-drenched memories. Pools of crimson on the desert sand, corpses, men in black wielding swords, her mother and father dead, her tribe destroyed. Ah! The jinn's voice echoed through the barren room. The pain eased until Luli was aware of every burning inch of her body. Her head felt as if it were full of cotton as she looked up and saw ruby-red eyes staring at her from the dark. You are a victim of the men in black. The darkness rippled, and Luli had the impression the jinn was reaching for her. Her assailant's voice softened with hesitation. You... The word pitched into a shriek as sunlight burst through the room. The shadow writhed and screamed until it was nothing but darkness bleeding into the tile cracks. Slowly, Luli turned toward the doors, where a man stood haloed in sunlight. Dark spots danced behind her eyelids as the world slowly refilled with color. She managed one blessed intake of air before collapsing.